I knew something was wrong the moment the waiter placed the amuse-bouche in front of me. Not because it was cold, not because it was late, but because my phone lit up with the kind of message that hollows out your spine before your brain even catches up. You're fired. We want someone who actually delivers. No greeting. No explanation. Just that. Sent at 9:02 p.m. from my boss, Patrick, while I was sitting under a ceiling of crystal chandeliers at the most exclusive fintech gala of the year. I stared at the screen for a full 5 seconds. Around me, crystal clinked. Laughter rippled like champagne. Cameras flashed. The elite of the elite toasted a future they thought they'd built with their bare hands. And across the long, glistening table sat Marcus DeWitt, CEO of Crown Venture Capital, Patrick's biggest rival, and the man he once called a walking PR scandal in a Brioni suit. Marcus had seen the text before I even turned the screen toward him. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. I just tilted the phone slightly in his direction. His eyes scanned it in 2 seconds flat. Then came the grin. Slow, sharp, surgical, like a wolf who'd just heard the barn door creak open. He raised his glass toward me. Not a toast. A signal. That was the moment everything began to shift. But let me rewind. You probably think I dropped the ball. Missed a deadline. Tanked a pitch. Let me stop you right there. I was the reason our division hit Q2 numbers 2 quarters in a row. I designed the compliance model that saved us from 3 lawsuits. I negotiated the deal with Vanguard that Patrick took credit for. I wasn't just a top performer. I was the engine. And Patrick? He didn't fire me because I failed. He fired me because I succeeded without needing him. What makes it worse? I almost skipped the gala. I was tired, overworked, nursing a sinus headache and surviving off cold coffee and stress hormones. But I showed up anyway. Tailored navy gown, low heels, hair tight in a bun, professional armor. Because I knew appearances mattered in rooms like this. What I didn't know was that I was walking into my own execution. I stared down at the phone again. No follow-up message. Just the cold burn of dismissal. Patrick didn't even have the spine to do it in person. He didn't call HR. Didn't wait for Monday. Just fired me between wine courses at a black tie gala. As if my entire career was a removable accessory. My throat burned. Not from wine, but from fury I didn't dare show. Here's the thing about public betrayal. You can't flinch. You don't cry in a marble restroom or storm out in stilettos. You smile. You finish your sparkling water. You become ice. I raised my glass like I hadn't just lost my job. Smiled politely as the moderator on stage welcomed guests to the annual Tech for Tomorrow Awards. Nodded as people complimented the centerpieces. Played dead. Until I could decide whether I wanted to disappear or detonate. And then Marcus leaned across the table. Not fully. Just enough for me to hear him over the applause. I've been waiting for this moment. That's all he said. Not sorry. Not what happened. Just that. Like he already knew. Like this had been inevitable. I looked at him. Really looked. The sharp tucks. The cufflinks shaped like chess pieces. The man who'd outbid Patrick for 3 major partnerships this year. The man whose firm Patrick tried to bury with an anonymous smear campaign 6 months ago. Now he was smiling at me like I'd just stepped onto his chessboard. I didn't answer him. I didn't need to. Because in that moment, everything that had been fogged by exhaustion, loyalty, and the illusion of professionalism snapped into crystal clarity. I wasn't fired. I was freed. And Marcus? He wasn't just offering me a job. He was offering me an empire. I excused myself from the table 20 minutes later, smiled through 5 conversations I didn't hear, and stepped into the courtyard where the cold air slapped reality back into me. What do you do after someone sets fire to your career? You don't scream. You build your own match. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus. 11 a.m. tomorrow. My office. You'll want to see what I've been working on. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Somewhere inside, a switch flipped. The part of me that had been playing nice, dead. The part of me that once wanted a promotion, irrelevant. I didn't want a better job. I wanted Patrick to regret ever thinking I was disposable. Because the thing about men like him, they forget the people who build their castles. Until those people walk away with the blueprints. And I had all of them. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was panicked, but because I wasn't. That was the terrifying part. The numb calm that comes when your brain stops begging for fairness and starts sketching revenge in quiet, calculated strokes. I lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, dress still clinging to me like regret. Patrick had fired me in front of the industry, and he didn't even bother to wait for Monday. Didn't give HR a heads up. Didn't offer a severance meeting. No, he wanted a moment. A performance. He wanted to humiliate me publicly without ever lifting his voice. And I let him. I smiled. I toasted. I played the good soldier. But inside, I was already gathering the bones he'd buried. At 10:45 a.m., I stood in front of Marcus DeWitt's office on the 45th floor of the Monolith building. I wore black. Not for drama. For precision. Hair slicked, heels sharpened, face unreadable. The receptionist led me through a glass-paneled hallway that looked less like an office and more like the command deck of a spaceship. No posters, no branding, just silence and surveillance. Marcus was already waiting, of course. He stood as I entered, jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled up. That effortless power look people like Patrick try to replicate and always fail. He didn't smile this time. He just gestured to the chair across from him. "Before we start," he said, "I want to be clear. I'm not offering you a sympathy role. This isn't about kindness." "Good," I said. "I'm not interested in kindness." He slid a document across the table. NDA. Short. Brutal. Legally airtight. I signed it without flinching. "Now," he said, folding his hands, "tell me what Patrick's been hiding." I laughed once. Bitter. "How much time do you have?" "Until the market closes." So I told him. I started with the internal restructuring Patrick had kept off the books. The side pipeline he was building using shell firms and third-party consultants no one had properly vetted. How he'd pushed through an untested fraud detection tool to impress investors. A tool I had personally warned him wasn't ready for deployment. I told him how I'd written the foundational risk architecture for that platform. How Patrick had locked me out of the codebase 2 weeks ago without explanation, and how the new lead engineer was a 26-year-old he met at a golf tournament. Marcus listened without interrupting. No notes, no commentary. Just that stare. Like he was watching dominoes line themselves up. When I finished, he leaned back. "How much of what you built still lives inside that system?" I met his eyes. 80%, and the rest is duct-taped guesswork they don't even understand. He nodded once, then slid a second folder across the table. Inside, a blueprint. Not mine. Theirs. Crown Ventures had gotten their hands on Halotech's internal launch plan for their new flagship product, the same platform I helped design before Patrick locked me out. "What do you want me to do with this?" I asked. Marcus looked me dead in the eye. "I want you to tear it apart, from the inside out." He didn't blink, didn't ask if I was comfortable, didn't treat me like a broken asset. He handed me the detonator and trusted I'd know where to aim. That's when it hit me. Marcus didn't want revenge. He wanted results. And he believed I could deliver. I left the office at noon with a temporary badge, a login to their sandbox environment, and a mission: dissect Halotech's future before they even knew it was vulnerable. Back at my apartment, I turned off my phone. Not airplane mode. Office. Then I pulled out my old hard drive, the one I'd used for every prototype model I ever built. Encrypted, isolated, and entirely legal. Because here's the twist. I never signed over my IP. Patrick forgot to include the updated clause in my last contract renewal. He was too busy prepping for a yacht retreat in Santorini. Rookie mistake. By 6 p.m., I had already isolated 3 major compliance flaws in the Halo tech system. By 8 p.m., I had rewritten a cleaner, smarter version of their risk engine. By midnight, I had a pitch deck ready. Title slide, Lantern. Because if they were going to fire me to make room for someone who actually delivers, I was going to deliver something they'd never recover from. And that was just the beginning. Because Patrick, he hadn't just fired a strategist. He'd unleashed one. I didn't post. I didn't tweet. I didn't even tell my best friend what I was working on. Because this wasn't a comeback. This was a siege. The kind that starts with silence. The kind that doesn't knock. It rewrites the locks. Marcus's team gave me a small, nondescript conference room on the 43rd floor of Crown Ventures' Manhattan office. No windows. No distractions. Just a whiteboard, 2 monitors, and a secure server access line. They called it the Vault, a place for projects that didn't technically exist. Lantern wasn't a product yet. It was a weapon dressed as a solution. My job? Build something so elegant and terrifying that when Halo Tech's spring launch stumbled, and it would stumble, we'd already be standing there with the answer. An answer only I could offer. But first, I had to dissect what I built for Patrick. Because yes, I built it. Halo's risk platform might have been flashy on the outside, but underneath, it was a Frankenstein monster of stolen frameworks, vendor APIs, and the skeleton of my original diagnostics model. One Patrick had watered down until it barely resembled what I designed. It was like watching someone bling out a calculator and call it AI. Worse? They were planning to release a version that bypassed critical compliance checks. Why? To beat Crown Ventures to the press cycle. I had warned them 6 months ago. Patrick laughed, said, "We don't have time for paranoia, Mandy. Investors want vision, not red tape. But vision without structure is delusion." And Patrick? He was building on sand. By day 3 in the vault, I had reverse engineered their roadmap. Not from stolen files, but from memory. And yes, I know how that sounds. But when you've bled over a product for 2 years straight, you don't forget where the bones are buried. I mapped their weak points. Every single one. From inflated benchmark claims to simulated test results that looked good in presentations but collapsed under real-world volatility. By day 5, I had something that could run twice as fast, with half the code. We called it Lantern because it didn't just analyze risk, it illuminated it. But I didn't feel proud. Not yet. Because pride implies closure. And closure is a privilege you earn after the dust settles. What I felt was a kind of quiet rage. The kind that doesn't scream, doesn't break dishes. The kind that builds systems so devastatingly efficient, even your enemies can't help but admire them. On Friday morning, Marcus called me into his office. He had a printout in front of him. A leaked internal memo from Halo Tech. Elise from corporate comms, the same Elise who once accidentally forgot to CC me on a board update, had drafted it. We are excited to announce an accelerated rollout of our flagship risk analysis suite in Q2, led by visionary leadership and powered by proprietary predictive algorithms. I nearly choked. Proprietary? Predictive. Those were my terms, my slides. Even the phrasing. Accelerated rollout? I'd written that in a draft months ago. Marcus looked at me, deadpan. They're rushing it, trying to get ahead of us. They're walking into a wall, I replied. And that's when we made the call. Not to lawyers, not to press. To clients. We didn't need to smear Halo Tech. We just needed to show up first. That afternoon, I led a closed-door demo for 3 board members of a Fortune 100 insurance firm that had been shopping for a new compliance tool. One of them had almost signed with Patrick's team last month. 10 minutes into the demo, she leaned forward, narrowed her eyes, and asked, "Is this what Halo's been promising us?" I smiled. Number this is what they hoped it would be. No boast, no malice, just fact. We didn't mention Patrick's name. Didn't show a single competitor comparison slide. We didn't have to. Because when you're holding fire in your bare hands, the smoke speaks louder than you do. That night, Marcus forwarded me an email. Client has requested to pause current Halo contract. Exploring alternative options. Immediate. Subject line, urgent. Patrick had no idea. Not yet. He was still prepping for his keynote in Austin the following week. Still printing banners and rehearsing fake laugh stories about innovation in front of hotel mirrors. I wondered if he even remembered the text he sent me at the gala. You're fired. We want someone who actually delivers. He wanted someone who delivers? Then I'd deliver. But not to him. On him. The funny thing about collapse is that it doesn't start with a bang. It starts with silence. A contract put on hold. A meeting rescheduled. A LinkedIn update that feels just a little too vague. Patrick didn't know it yet, but the air around him had already started thinning. By Monday morning, 2 more firms quietly paused negotiations with Halo Tech. One was a former client of Marcus. The other had heard whispers, not of fraud, not yet, but of instability. And that's all it takes in tech. A seed of doubt, and the whole harvest rots. Marcus's team had one rule for me. No fingerprints, so we didn't attack. We didn't leak. We predicted. We dropped a white paper through a neutral think tank, detailing the ethical risks of synthetic data in AI compliance tools. I didn't write the report, but every bullet point came from my mouth. We didn't name Halo Tech, but every line mirrored their unreleased platform so closely it may as well have come with a company logo. It hit the trades Tuesday morning. By noon, 5 different analysts had reshared it. By 3 p.m., investors were asking questions. By 6 p.m., Patrick's CTO had gone mysteriously dark on Slack. The first internal leak came the next day. A screenshot from an all-hands message in Halo Tech's private employee forum. Let's not feed the rumors. We are confident in our leadership and our roadmap. Translation? There were rumors, and someone was leaking. I didn't leak a thing. I didn't have to. Truth leaks on its own when people are scared enough. Meanwhile, I stayed in my little concrete box on floor 43. Coding, polishing, listening. Lantern was no longer a project. It was a product. And it didn't just work. It sang. It identified risk clusters 3 times faster than Halo's flagship tool. It flagged anomalies with 94% accuracy, up from their 67%. And most importantly, it never used a line of code I didn't write myself. Marcus kept checking in, but less and less frequently. He was giving me space. Not out of kindness, but because he'd already seen enough. He knew I had it under control. Still, I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Because beneath all the strategy, I felt it rising. That old, familiar pang of guilt. The one that doesn't come when your enemy bleeds, but when you realize someone else might bleed with them. Her name was Dana, junior analyst at Halo Tech. She started 6 months before I left. Smart, hungry, a little nervous. I used to send her the red lines no one explained, took her under my wing without even meaning to. I checked her profile. Still at Halo. Still smiling in that headshot that hadn't been updated since onboarding. And I wondered, was she the one who got my desk? Was she the one now sitting in meetings she didn't fully understand? Wondering why the floor was shifting? Not everyone inside the building deserves to be buried when it burns, but that's the cost of fallout. The fire doesn't care who started it, only what's dry enough to catch. Thursday morning, I got the message. Anonymous sender, no subject line, just a link. A video file, 37 seconds long. I watched it with the sound off first. Didn't need audio to know what it was. Patrick, at a press preview. A mic pinned to his lapel. Talking fast, eyes wide, sweat blooming at his collar. His voice cracked halfway through the Q&A. I turned on the sound. Rewound. A journalist had asked about emerging risks in AI compliance tools. Patrick blinked, fumbled, then said, "Look, if our competitors want to weaponize caution, that's their prerogative. We're focused on innovation." The room went quiet. No laughter, no applause. Just the thick sound of confidence cracking. By that evening, a second video leaked. A clip from a Halo Tech town hall. An employee standing up and asking if layoffs were coming. Patrick didn't answer. He just ended the meeting. Marcus called me that night. "You've done enough," he said. "We could wrap now, let Lantern go public in 2 weeks and still win." But I wasn't done. Because there was one card left. One thread Elise, his chief strategy officer, had signed 2 years ago without reading. A buried clause inside an old vendor contract, authored by me. It stated that any platform integration built off my proprietary model remained the intellectual property of the original architect unless a direct transfer agreement was executed. No such transfer had ever been filed. In plain English, they were using my system illegally, and I had the signed document. Time-stamped, archived, fully enforceable. That was the last landmine, the one you don't step on. You just hear it click. And by sunrise, Patrick would hear it too. At 6:02 a.m., the email went out. Not to Patrick, not to Elise, but to legal. CC, Halo Tech's interim compliance officer. BCC, Marcus, attached. A scanned PDF of the contract clause Elise had initialed in a hurry on a flight to Boston 2 years ago. Subject line, Intellectual Property Violation Notice, Lantern Protocol, Enclosed Documentation. I hit send. Then I sat back. Didn't pour coffee. Didn't check Twitter. Just stared at the Manhattan skyline as the first rays of light split the buildings like scalpels. Because I knew what was coming. By 9 a.m., my inbox had 12 messages. By 9:15, 2 calls. I didn't answer either. By 10:03, I received a legal reply. Curt, rattled, demanding clarification. I replied with one sentence. You'll find it on page 14, paragraph 3, subsection B. At 10:48 a.m., I got a call from a blocked number. I let it ring once, then picked up. Patrick's voice hit the line like static. "What the hell is this, Mandy?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was familiar. That tone. That how dare you entitlement wrapped in confusion. He'd used it on interns who double-booked meetings. He'd used it on Dana once when she brought up salary bands. Now he was using it on the woman who just collapsed his launch. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't match his anger. "It's a reminder," I said, "that I built the bones of your system, and you never paid for them." He cursed under his breath. I waited. "You're doing this out of spite?" "No," I said. "I'm doing it out of ownership. You threw me out of the house I built, Patrick. I'm just changing the locks. Click. No goodbye. No apology. Just silence." The next day, the press release went out. Not from Halo Tech. From us. Crown Ventures announces exclusive launch of Lantern, the first transparent risk engine built for real-world compliance. Marcus's name was on the release. Mine wasn't. But the industry knew. The VCs knew. The clients knew. The analysts knew. Even the interns pouring cold brew in shared WeWork offices knew. Because reputation travels faster than scandal. And everyone had watched me disappear. Now they were watching me rise. That evening, Tech Pulse Weekly published a piece that went viral in our world. From fired to founder, the quiet storm behind Lantern's market takeover. Still no direct quotes. But again, everyone knew. I didn't need to be a headline. I was the story. By the end of the week, Halo Tech's stock dropped 27%. Their spring product launch was delayed indefinitely. And Elise? She resigned to pursue new opportunities, per an internal memo that leaked before noon. Patrick lasted 3 more days. On Friday, he stepped down, effective immediately. The board issued a vague thank you statement about early-stage innovation and bold leadership. Translation? They shoved him out and locked the door. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just moved on. Lantern rolled out in phases. Marcus offered me equity and a permanent executive seat. I declined the seat. But I kept the equity, because I didn't need the title to prove I'd won. I got emails from people I hadn't heard from in years. Some congratulated me. Some asked if I was hiring. A few tried to reframe the past, make it sound like they'd always supported me. I responded to none of them. Not out of malice, just clarity. Because when you've walked through fire, you don't go back to people who handed you the match. One night, around 2 a.m., I got a message. Anonymous. No name, no sign-off. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve what happened. I hope you build something better. It might have been Dana, or someone else from the inside. I never found out. But I appreciated it. Not for closure, but for the truth. Because that's what this whole thing had been about from the beginning. Not revenge, not even justice. Recognition. You can work twice as hard, carry whole systems on your back, build fortunes for people who never learn your name. But the moment you stop playing quiet, they call you difficult, disloyal, replaceable. I wasn't any of those things. I was essential. They just learned it too late. The final report went live the next month. Lantern was outperforming Halotech's prototype by every major metric. Crown's valuation surged. Patrick's name faded like it had never mattered. And me? I sat alone in my new apartment, staring at a clean whiteboard. One word written in the center. Next. Because legacy isn't built from applause. It's built from ashes. And mine had just begun.